Hello, it's Mark from Cars and Cameras, and today we're going to take a look at the Sony RX100 Mark VI. Now, this is the 6th generation of the RX100 camera, and as you can see from the unboxing, it comes with all the standard Sony goodies. Nothing new here. Camera also uses the same Sony X series battery. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And some of the new features, you have a one-step with a pop-up viewfinder. You don't have to pop it up and pull it out like the previous generations. Also, the lens on this camera is an astounding 24 to 200 millimeters. The f-stop is 2.8 on the wide end and 4.5 on the telephoto end. So it's a little bit slower than the previous generation Sony RX100 camera, but the lens is a lot longer. Also, the articulating screen moves a little further I believe in the opposite direction here, as you can see. It does flip up in a selfie mode. The previous generation, I believe, did that also. Okay, so let's take a look at some test shots. So here is the lens at its maximum range, which is 200 millimeters. And you can see it looks really good. It looks very sharp and clear. This is at 4K at 1/50th of a second, and I'm a big fan of clear image zoom, and you can see when it goes to 400 millimeters, it looks really good too. A lot of good dynamic range with this camera. It works really well. This is all with the standard picture profile. When I first use a camera, I always like to see it just straight out of the box with the standard picture profile. No color correcting here. This is all these images are straight out of the camera, just like you could do at home. And you can see here another 200 millimeter zoom shot at maximum range. And you can see here zooming into clear image zoom, and it still looks really sharp and clear. That clear image zoom gets better and better every year. Okay, so here is a handheld shot at 200 millimeters. And I'm also going to do a clear image zoom shot, and you can see it works pretty good. Okay, so because this camera does not have ND filters, and I like to shoot at 1/50th of a second, and it only goes up to f11, I had to wait till pretty late in the day to shoot. I also wanted to see how the camera performed at night, but not having the ND filters, well, for me it's kind of a deal breaker, and I'll talk more about that later on some of the options that you can do. But these Twilight shots, the camera looks pretty good. It does a really good job. Very nice dynamic range. The shots look really, really nice. I like the way it handles everything here. Sony is definitely changing their color science. The color science of this camera is very similar to the A7 Mark III and the A9. They should cut together really, really well. So if you're using this camera as like a B or C camera to use with those cameras, you should have no problem at all matching the footage. It'll look really, really good. But as I said earlier, I am using the standard picture profile. You can get much better results shooting an S-Log or some of the other log settings. This camera also does S-Log 3. I don't recommend it. S-Log 2 would work really well, but as you can see with the standard picture profile, it does a really nice job. So here is a 400 millimeter clear image zoom shot, and I'm going to basically take it from 400 millimeters in clear image zoom. You're going to see a little pause there. That's now 200 millimeters optically, and we're going to go all the way back to 24 millimeters. And I got to say, in this small compact camera, being able to do a shot like that is pretty incredible. Now let's talk about the things I don't like about the camera. I don't like that Sony is using the same X series battery. It runs out too fast. I mean, basically, I was able to get the shooting that I needed to get done with the camera, but then the battery was exhausted. Now, one bright side of the camera is I did not see any overheating messages, and I have seen those. I've used plenty of the Sony, the previous generation, the Mark IV and the Mark V, and the camera would overheat in 4K right away. and I did not see that on this camera whatsoever. So that is a nice thing, that basically it's not running into that problem, which is really nice. But I do not like that little battery. I wish they would have made the camera a little thicker so they could put a bigger battery in the camera. Okay, so let's talk about the deal breaker, and let's talk about the workaround. So the deal breaker for me is this camera not having built-in ND filter. That is a deal breaker because I like to shoot at 1/50th of a second, and to do that, you either need an f-stop of a pretty high number. This camera only goes up to f11, so when you're outside in the full daylight, you're not going to be able to shoot unless you got ND filter on the camera. Now, Sony has an adapter that was designed for the earlier RX series cameras, and it allows you to put a filter on the front of the camera. It's got a 49mm filter thread. Now, it's an adhesive mount. I'm not really sure how this is all going to work, but it does allow you to put an ND filter on if you want to. Now, this only works on this camera in video mode. If you try to put it on the camera in photo mode, it will vignette. I have one of these adapters coming to see how it works. So guys, there's my quick look at the Sony RX100 Mark VI. I think this camera is a great addition if you have a Sony A9 or another Sony camera. It just makes a great little video camera, especially with that new lens. If the camera had a bigger battery and it had the ND filter built in, it would be perfect. But other than that, it's a great little camera. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope you like what you see here. If you do, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you're new to my channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. A lot of cool stuff coming up very shortly. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.